there is judgment about pastors who leave representative ministry for another kind of ministry. If what we're doing right now isn't considered ministry, then I don't know what would be. We're both doing the best we can to talk through God's presence in our lives as we are living through them in the ways that we feel we're doing the next right.
Welcome to the In-Between, a space for anyone navigating from the familiar to the unknown. Whether you're facing a personal, professional, or spiritual disruption, these conversations are here to help guide you through the questions, uncertainties, and opportunities that come with change. Hear from leaders, thinkers, and storytellers who found their way forward, and learn how you can too. No matter where you're starting, you don't have to navigate this alone. Today, I'm sitting down with Suzanne Stabile, wife to Joe, mother of 4, and grandmother to many. For over 30 years, Suzanne has helped individuals and communities engage in the deep work of spiritual formation, self-awareness, and presence through the lens of the Enneagram. Suzanne is the co-founder of Life in the Trinity Ministry, host of the Enneagram Journey podcast, and the author of several best-selling books, including The Road Back to You and The Journey Toward Wholeness, and is affectionately referred to as the Enneagram Godmother. Suzanne, I am grateful and feeling blessed to have this conversation with you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Evan. I feel the same way.
Well, I've been excited, and I'd like to start here. You know, you've spent so much of your life helping people see themselves using the Enneagram. Can you take us back? What first drew you into this work?
Sure. I'm married, as not everybody knows, I suppose, to a former Roman Catholic priest. And he and I worked together for 3 years in the Catholic Church. I was a single mom with 3 kids when we married. And he adopted my 3, and we had a 4th. And he really had never even thought about leaving the priesthood. He went to high school seminary at 14. He was with the Vincentian Fathers for 26 years and loved it. He loved all of it. And while we were teaching, our work together was to promote Vatican II and the teaching of Vatican II, which was really a good, healthy, exciting time for the Catholic Church. And in that work, he began to see the church in a different light and see the role of women and the role of lay people in a different light. And he decided to leave the priesthood. Sometime after that, not a terribly long time, we were best friends. And I don't know, maybe a few months later, he called me, weird phone call, and said, it was so odd. He said, would you maybe, I don't know, do you want to go get a burger or something? And I said, sure, what's wrong with you? He said, what do you mean? I said, are you asking me out on a date? He said, I think I might be. I've never been on a date.
Wow.
I've told you all that to try to tell you where we were. Joe has 2 master's degrees, and he held lots of roles as a priest in the Catholic Church, parish priest, seminary professor, and dean of students, lots of roles. And while we were working together, we had some significant spiritual experiences that when we stopped working together, we didn't know what to do with. So we struggled with that, figured out that actually we really love being together, decided to get married. And then he all of a sudden had 3 kids, and we were expecting a 4th. And we still were trying to figure out what to do. Joe had a hard time finding a job. He was blackballed, I think is the word. I don't know what that word should be, by the Catholic Church in the Diocese of Dallas. They said, if you hire him, we're withdrawing funding, and a lot of stuff to grieve with, in those days, not really great tools for grieving.
Mm-hmm.
And one day he said, I'm gonna just call Father Richard Rohr. I've never met him, but I love what I read, and I'm just gonna call him and see if he'll see us. And he called him, and Richard answered the phone, and he said, will you? And he said, sure, come on. So we went to Albuquerque, spent half a day with him. He agreed to continue to mentor us and offer us some spiritual direction. We went back a couple of months later, and as we were leaving the second time, he handed me a manuscript for one of his Enneagram books. And he said, take this and read it. I'll be interested when we get back together to see what you think. And it turned out that we were back together a month later at that point, and I had read the book. I never understood wanting to eat the pages until I read that book. And I thought, I want all of it to be inside of me, all of it. And I explained that to him. He said, I thought that would happen. Now, this is the mid-'80s. So very little had been published about the Enneagram. And what had been published didn't require discernment as to whether or not it was true Enneagram wisdom in the tradition of the ancient tool. And he said, read them all. And we'll talk again, but I'm going to suggest now that you not talk about the Enneagram until you've studied it for 5 years. So, with the former Father Joseph Stabile on one side of me and Father Richard Rohr on the other side of me, it just felt like I had to say, oh, okay. As a two and a teacher all my life, or coach, I coached college and high school basketball. I talk about things when I love them, but I didn't.
Wow.
And I think that's made all the difference in my teaching and in how I see the Enneagram and in how I've applied the Enneagram. I have the unexpected privilege of being one of the keynote speakers at the International Enneagram Association's 30th anniversary event in Minneapolis. And Russ Hudson and Ann Muir and I were on a call yesterday talking about what we would say on the panel and how we would do it and how we would handle it and all that. And it was so clear to me that they both are working from always the initial deep Enneagram work that they did. I am too, but my teaching is different in that I took the approach intuitively of Enneagram and. So I've done Enneagram in relationships, Enneagram and stress, Enneagram and Enneagram and. And because of that, I end up not only with the Life in the Trinity Ministry community, but also working in the greater community, teaching and offering the Enneagram in unique spaces where people might not know it or not know to use it. So I teach a lot in churches. I teach in public spaces where everybody can come who wants to. I also teach in 2 of Baylor's hospitals here in Dallas. I work with surgical teams, and I work with chaplains, and it has proven, I work with church staffs and churches, and it has proven to me over and over and over that it is our best opportunity for being on the journey at the same time with other people, but having a different experience and looking at the journey through a different lens. And once people understand that when 3 people on a team look at something and they're different Enneagram numbers, then none of the 3 see the same thing. And it's an opportunity, I think, not just for peace among us, but for compassion and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And once you know Enneagram wisdom, platitudes don't work anymore. One of the things I've been saying for a long, long time is the golden rule is a myth.
Hey friends, I want to pause just for a moment. If you're navigating the complex and emotional process of leaving a mission-driven role, whether that's been ministry, nonprofit work, or any purpose-driven career, you're not just looking for a new job. You're wrestling with things like the personal, professional, and spiritual dynamics that come with all of this. Maybe you're asking things like, who am I outside of this role? What skills do I even have that can translate into the future? Will I ever find work that feels meaningful again? If this is resonating, download Finding Your Way to Flourishing. It's a free guide that I've put together for mission-driven leaders who find themselves in the midst of transition. This isn't just another guide, it's a thoughtfully crafted resource that's designed to help you begin processing your identity beyond the role that you're leaving. It can help you pinpoint which skills you can confidently bring into your new and next role. It'll help you lean into your faith and find peace during the midst of this uncertainty. Not overwhelming, it's not complicated. It's just the first step to getting some clarity and moving forward. You don't have to figure this all out alone, and I'd love to walk this journey with you. This guide is completely free, and you can grab your copy today by clicking the link in the description or in the show notes. Let's start making some sense of this transition together. Okay, now back to the conversation.
Other people do not want to be treated the way I want to be treated. They want to be treated the way they want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
And the Enneagram teaches you how to do that with some investment, but you certainly don't have to go deep into Enneagram work to just be a better human being in relationship to other humans.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Thank you for all of that context. I'm curious, is there a certain sphere or group? You had mentioned all the different types of settings that you teach and use the Enneagram in. Is there a particular group or a setting that you most enjoy?
I don't think so.
No?
I do love working with college kids, college young adults, and seminarians or others in master's degree programs. Because when you're that age, it takes me all day to do a good job teaching a Know Your Number workshop. I spend 40 minutes on every number, and it takes all day with questions and responses and all that. Mm-hmm. I can teach college kids in half that time. And the reason is because when you're 19, 20, 21, 22, you know yourself better than you do any other time because you're free and your plan has been, I'm going to do whatever I want to. I'm free now to be me, which is a terribly unhealthy place to be. And it gives you a perfect mirror for your Enneagram number. So when older people can't figure out their number, I always tell them to think about when they were 20. Because that's when you are in your personality almost 100%.
Yeah, makes sense.
So there's a difference in teaching different places, different people, different ages. Mm-hmm. But the Enneagram stays the same through all of it. Mm-hmm. And so variety is great fun for me because I'm always learning and never know what I'm going to learn when I'm working with a classification, I guess is the word, or a group of people who I've not worked with a group like that before.
So in some of those earlier transitions that you mentioned at the start, when those transitions took place for you, how did that feel?
There were a lot for me. So I just want to remind everybody who's listening and tell them if they don't know anything about me that I'm adopted. And being an adopted child is a different journey than any other. I'm blessed. My father was a doc and he delivered me. And they literally took me home from the hospital.
Oh.
So I was adopted when I was 2 days old. That, though, means that somebody had to not want me for my parents to want me. So I keep trying to take people back to where were you and who were you before the transition. I did a lot of things growing up. I had lots of opportunities, and I traveled with my parents internationally some, and I was, I think, wise beyond my years, but didn't know it, which kept me from being a wise ass beyond my years, right? College was a little tricky for me. I had been sexually abused as a foreign exchange student when I was 16, and I was carrying that trauma in college. But I always wanted to be a basketball coach, and I got a chance to coach in a high school starting my sophomore year at SMU, and I was able to do that through the rest of my time at SMU undergraduate. And so that was college was a transition, but I immediately had a solution in coaching. Then I taught and coached and started things, and things were getting a little wonky for me. I always wanted to have children, and with my 18 hours a semester and my job in college, I didn't date much, and it was an odd time, I guess. I was on a different journey than people my age. And always trying to belong, because that's a two thing, and that's an adoption thing. And ultimately, I married the wrong person. And I think I knew it, maybe. I was wrong for him. He was wrong for me. Wrong. And we had 3 children, and I'm so grateful. He chose not to stay in their life after we divorced. That was a transition. Marriage was a transition. Divorce was a transition. I gained wisdom mostly from my parents, who were highly evolved in my estimation of them during those transformative transitions. My dad, using different language than the language I use, would say that, you know, in order to make something of this, you have to see who you were and who you're becoming. And I've always done that. It's very helpful and possible. It's very doable. And marriage to Joe was a transition in that there was so much pain around him. His parents were very sad. They were daily communicants, and his dad was a deacon in the Catholic Church. And they had 3 girls and a boy, and to have a son be a priest until he's 40 is a huge thing. Nobody in the Vincentian Fathers ever thought Joe would leave. Nobody in his family thought he would leave. So that was a surprise to everybody. There was a lot of pain around that. I think that's when we started saying, all we know to do is the next right thing. We don't have a plan. We don't know how to make a plan. We're going to do the next right thing. And Joe was invited into the United Methodist Church. It was a lateral move for him. They accepted his education. He had plenty and more than was necessary. And we started where everybody starts in the United Methodist Church, with a small rural church and our 4 kiddos. And we really loved all of it. Transitions came fast. We moved 5 times in 8 years. We were moved 5 times in 8 years. Because of Joe's gifts, I think the United Methodist Church wanted to put him through the same experience that other Methodist pastors had, but quickly. And a lot of transitioning. Lots. Retirement has been a transition. In the United Methodist Church, you have to retire at 72. Joe's 77. He's not appointed by the bishop, but he was hired right before he turned 72 at the First United Methodist Church downtown Dallas, which is a flagship United Methodist Church. He's on staff there part-time, and they kind of let him do the things he loves. And it's very honoring, and it's a good thing for him. And we started Life in the Trinity Ministry in the Catholic Church. So we brought it with us, and of course it's changed in so many ways. I would imagine that that's more transition than most people put on the table. It's a lot. But what I would say is each transition taught us different things. And we're now both transitioning into the reality of aging. I'm 74. Joe will be 78 in July. We're both very healthy. We both essentially work full-time. And that's a thing. When our children, each one left home, it was a transition for our family. We sent our children all the way to school, and they all came back. And they're here in the area with spouses and with all of our grandchildren. So now transitions for us are being grams and granddaddy to grandchildren who are graduating from high school and going to college. And that's a thing. It's all a thing that is different than it was before that thing happened. Yeah, that's a lot.
That is a lot, and I appreciate you sharing all of that. What does someone need to know? Are there unforeseen dynamics that maybe have surfaced? Any dynamics seem to resurface amidst all of those transitions that you've experienced? What might those be?
Well, one is that Joe and I experienced those transitions differently. He's a 9 on the Enneagram, and I'm a 2. And he had Vincentian Fathers, you could only serve a church for 3 years at a time. You were appointed for 3 years, and you could stay for 6, and then you were moved. Joe left home at 14. Moving was his pattern in life. I lived in Floydada, Texas till I was 18. I've lived in Dallas, Texas since. I didn't have those transitions. And it turned out then when we transitioned from church to church that Joe was able to move to the next church. And I still felt emotionally connected to the last church while I was trying to connect well to the people we were serving in this new church. And I learned that I can't carry all that. And so the summation of what I would say about that is that the idea that our meaningful relationships with friends and coworkers are forever is not actually a thing. They are great relationships for a season. And once I learned that, I'm still learning it, but once I understood that concept, it changed my expectation for the relationship during the season. And that was very helpful. The people I'm committed to forever are Joe and our children and their children and a few very close friends. And other relationships for me are transitional. And that's very different than transactional. But they're confused a lot.
Are there indicators in the midst of, as you're building those relationships, that, this is going to be one of those lifelongs, or this is going to be a transition? What are those indicators?
If you look back. So Kierkegaard says, we live our lives forward, but we understand them looking back. 3 7s and 8s, orientation, Enneagram 3 7s and 8s, orientation is to the future. 1s, 2s, and 6s is to the present moment. And 4s, 5s, and 9s is to the past. Now, what that means is that's where you're tethered. I'm tethered to the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
Joe's tethered back, but he's not stuck back.
Mm.
Tethered in that he brings with him the wisdom that he learned from that. And if he runs into somebody from that part of his life somewhere, it's an automatic connection that has astonishing brevity, but is satisfying for both. The present moment, what I've had to learn is, because of my orientation, I'm not tethered to the past. I'm not really planning for the future. I'm present to everybody I'm with right now. The problem with that is being present to people right now gives other people the impression that the relationship is deeper and is going to be longer lasting than it is.
Wow.
And I had to learn to change my vocabulary with people. One of my favorite, I've done some work in recovery rooms and with folks in recovery. And one of my favorite lines that they have is, every expectation is resentment waiting to happen. And if your orientation is to the future, then you have all kinds of expectations about what that's going to be like. And if it's to the past, then you believe that all things can be as good as that was. And if it's in the present moment, then you expect from 6 other ways of seeing the world more than they have to give.
Wow.
And so I think we have to really understand the importance of orientation to time. And I think we have to be careful that we don't invite people into some kind of magic that we can't maintain ourselves.
Mm. Is there any, when my wife and I, we were in a role at a church for 20 plus years, 18-ish of those years I worked there. Since moving on, there's 1 or 2 relationships that I still have. And even some of those were, at the time, you think, oh, these are going to be forever, lifelong things. And they're not, at least at this point. However, a couple of those relationships, I'm a 5, and one of those other relationships is a 6. Does any of that factor into some of those relational dynamics as far as which ones are sustained or can move forward the longest?
1s, 2s, and 6s are dependent numbers. The expectation mode is different for each of the 3 stances. Let's do a little review. There's a lot of 3s in the Enneagram. So the 9 numbers are divided into 3 triads. And the triads are determined by which one of the 3 centers of intelligence that Maurice Nicoll taught in the 1940s. He said that we all respond to life first with either what do I feel, what do I think, or what am I going to do? If you apply Maurice Nicoll's work to the Enneagram and its wisdom, then you find out that 2s, 3s, and 4s respond first to stimulus from the environment with what do I feel. 5s, 6s, and 7s with what do I think, and 8s, 9s, and 1s with what am I going to do. However, Karen Horney did some very good work also in the 1940s. She was 1947, I think. She was a German American, and she said all people either move toward other people, away from other people, or against other people. If you put that work on top of Maurice Nicole's work, on top of the Enneagram, then what you find is that in each triad, one number moves toward other people, one number moves away from other people, and one number, in her language, stands against other people. My language is stands independently, and it feels like it's against. Those numbers make up stances. I think everybody who teaches the Enneagram, I hesitate to use the word master teachers, but I think it's important to use that word at the same time. And I think we all have our own ways of doing that and our own ways of talking about it and thinking about it. And I think we each have a sweet spot. And my sweet spot is stances. Mm-hmm. That's where I think the magic is, and that's what I work from. And the reason from that is that I think we have to have balance in all things. So if you ask me overall, what does the Enneagram offer? It teaches us how to have balance. Hmm. And people who are balanced can live life with less conflict and less pain and more peace. So thinking, feeling, and doing need to be balanced. And they each need to be used for their purpose. Like a 5 would say, I've been thinking about what I feel. No. I want you to talk about what you feel before you think about it. Mm-hmm. Right? So stances then leaves you with 1, 2, 6 is referred to as the dependent stance. 3, 7, 8 is the aggressive stance. And 4, 5, and 9 is the withdrawing stance. Now here comes the magic. 3, 7s, and 8s are feeling repressed. 4s, 5s, and 9s are doing repressed. And 1s, 2s, and 6s are thinking repressed. I hope, since I've written a book or two and I'm working on another one and I teach everywhere, that people get it, that I can think. So I'm not saying that 1s, 2s, and 6s don't think. Here's what I am saying. 1s consider their inner dialogue that they have in their heads all the time with the critic as thinking. And that's not thinking. That's actually listening and arguing in your head with somebody who's not telling you the truth. Mm-hmm. 2s think all the time. But if a 2's honest with you, they'll tell you that they think all the time about relationships. And 6s misuse the thinking center for worst case scenario planning. What's the worst thing that could happen, and how am I going to deal with it if it does? 4s, 5s, and 9s do stuff. 4s chase shiny things. They do what they want to do and what has texture and what calls to them. And 5s plan to do more than they do. And then they overplan by avoiding doing. Another way to say that is they avoid doing. The better way, they avoid doing by overplanning. And 9s are doing something all the time. And sometimes it's what needs to be done. Mm-hmm. 3, 7s, and 8s. Let me just do the feelings. 3, 7s, and 8s. All right. 3s take in information with feelings, but they don't use feelings to make sense of it or decide what to do with it. 7s will say, I have so many feelings. Yes, you do. And they're all in one half of the range of feelings, the happy half. And 8s say, oh, I have so many feelings. No, you have one feeling, and it's passion. And because you're passionate about different things, it makes you think you have all these different feelings that you've identified. And you do have them, but you haven't identified them. The question you will get as a result of what I just said is this. Okay, well, how's a number both dominant and repressed at the same time? So 3's dominant and repressed feeling because 2, 3, 4 is dominant. That's the feeling center triad. So in the feeling triad, 2's, 3's, and 4's all take in information with feelings. But 3's then set the feelings aside to decide what to do with them later. 6's take in information with thinking, but they don't use productive thinking to make sense of the information they've taken in. And 9's take in information with doing, but it doesn't occur to them to question what's theirs to do and what somebody else's to do, so they just do.
Mm.
And then if you get unhappy with them for not doing the right thing, they say, I was doing something all day.
Mm. That is helpful. Is there any danger in not recognizing when we're defaulting to our stance in the midst of change and disruption and transition? And
Yes.
what might those dangers be, and how do we recognize that?
So the danger is that you're not using all 3 centers. So if you use one center to get through a transition and you don't employ the other 2, then the other 2 haven't transitioned. They're still where they were.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to use all 3 if you want all 3 on the other side of the transition.
Can you give me an example? What does that look like if one of the 3 transitions, but the other 2 stay where they were? What does that
Sure.
look like?
All right, I'll use me for an example, and then I'll use you. And if I get you wrong, then you'll say, that's not what happened.
Okay.
Because, I don't think I know what every number is going to do. I can predict what they might most likely do.
Mm-hmm.
As a 2, transitioning with only feelings means that I don't have a healthy goodbye with anybody because I'm doing all of that fluffy talk about, we'll see you soon. I know we'll run into each other somewhere. Our kids are still going to surely want to be together. Gosh, I'm so glad we got to build this part of our friendship. All those things that I would say thoughtlessly because I've learned better are things that mean all my feelings are where I am at the moment. The reality of that is when I get to the new place, all my feelings are going to be at the new place. And then I have given false but innocent expectations to other people that I will always be there in relationship with them and for them.
Mm.
And part of that is because I'm feeling dominant and it's a time of hyper feeling for me. And so I have to work to bring up thinking, am I really ever going to see these people again? Am I really going to do these things that I say I'll do? One of the things early on that happened working with Joel is people would invite us to do things, while I was talking to him. And I'd say, oh, we'd love to. And Joel one day said, stop saying we'd love to. Because we won't go back to that place. We won't have time or space to. And it was great. And it is over. And now we're going to a new place. And you've said to them, we'd love to come back. So they're going to get in touch with me. This is Joel talking. And saying, well, Suzanne said she'd love to come back. There's one example. Give you another example. This part of my journey right now, I'm working on when I'm really caught up in a podcast with somebody. I have historically said, oh, I'd love to do this again. I'd love to have you on our podcast again. Oh, I can't do that. I would love to, but I can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of not being respectful enough of the limited amount of what I can do and thinking through, am I going to do this again? Are we going to have space for this again?
Mm-hmm.
And then if I don't use all three, I am misrepresenting how much I can do, and I'm creating false expectations that are going to lead to resentment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you take only thinking through a transition, which would sure be a lovely thing if it could work, then the things that you make up have equal damage to the things that I say, because you don't say goodbye to people, because you don't necessarily think it's really a goodbye. And then when feelings are required for new people, and when doing is required for new people, you're still having feelings about the people you left because you didn't have the feelings about them when you were living.
Mm.
Now, I want us to go somewhere else, and you'll probably have to bring me back to doing a number from the aggressive state.
Okay.
Leaving ministry in a church is a different thing. I believe with everything in me that God calls people into ministry.
Mm.
And I think the people who know they've been called and who are answering a call are perhaps the best at ministry, but they're all pastoral ministry, representative pastoral ministry. But they are also the most vulnerable.
Mm.
Because somehow we haven't written into the reality of call and scripture and church and all those things that when God calls us to do something, it's not necessarily forever. The healthiest thing I could have done for me and my children and my ex-husband was get a divorce. And there are churches that think that's just terrible and you can't do it. The terrible thing is to raise children in a marriage that's unhealthy and where there's no love,
Mm-hmm.
in my estimation. And, that's for me, not for everybody, but I think it's worth thinking about.
Mm.
One of the loveliest things about Joe Stabile, I just adore him after 38 years. One of the loveliest things about Joe is that he knew God called him to the priesthood, no doubt. And he knew that God called him out of the priesthood, no doubt. We're the ones who make up that something's forever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there is judgment about pastors who leave ministry. And that's their language. It should be this. There is judgment about pastors who leave representative ministry for another kind of ministry. If what we're doing right now isn't considered ministry, then I don't know what would be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're both doing the best we can to talk through God's presence in our lives as we are living through them in the ways that we feel we're doing the next right thing.
Yeah.
And I think that churches have been given permission to believe that their pastors belong to them. as opposed to belong with them for a time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would be very difficult for any Enneagram number not to make up things after leaving a ministry of any kind about the past.
Mm-hmm.
If this is where we are now, well, then maybe none of what I thought was real was real. Maybe none of what I thought was happening was really happening.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I was just living in my head, you might think.
Mm-hmm.
And none of it was that. It's we just weren't intended to believe that a call would be, I don't know the word, permanent, and that God wouldn't continue to talk to us and speak into our lives and call us to do different things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Honestly, Evan, I wish everybody could see you. I don't need them to see me right now, but I wish for this entire interview, I wish they could see you. Because you are one of the most, if not the most, present person I have ever done an interview with. Present to every single word, it seems to me, and listening with your whole self. Your feelings are obvious. So I know that you're using all three centers right now. Your feelings are on your face and in your eyes, and your presence is so calming and good for me.
Wow.
That's ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of people are listening to podcasts who have already decided they're never going to another church again because they've been really hurt by the church.
Mm-hmm.
So those of us who are called into ministry are called to ministry wherever we are.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of people tell me I should be a pastor. You should be a pastor. You should be a preacher. No, I shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
I should not do that.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say anything in 20 minutes, for starters. And I would over-involve myself in people's lives. Not because I'm a two, but because I'm Suzanne Stabile. And that's how I'm put together.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. Thank you for your kind words, Suzanne. I mean, that really, really means a lot to me. And it's also encouraging as well. Yeah, I think for too long we've just defined and confined ministry to one space and to one aspect. And that was one thing that always kind of frustrated me. And I think something that was even bubbling underneath the surface for so long of I want to be more multidimensional than what this one role or expectation seems to hold me to.
Right.
A couple more questions if you're good.
I'm so good. I mean, I'm so good with what we're doing. Not that I'm so good as a human. I'm pretty good. I'm a pretty good human.
I knew what you meant, but yeah, I think you could say both. So in transition, after disruption, the temptation sometimes is to rebuild the old structure with just different materials. And you talked about, in some ways, discerning when it's time to move on, even when things feel maybe foggy. What can help us discern when it's time to create version 2.0 instead of rebuilding version 1?
Right. Number one, there are no exceptions to what I'm about to say for Joe and me. We think everybody needs what I'm about to say. Everybody needs a spiritual director. Because you can talk you, not you, Evan, but you, everybody, can talk yourself into believing that what you want is what God wants for you in a heartbeat. And you got to have a third party in that conversation between you and God who's asking good questions. And a good spiritual director does that. Everybody needs a therapist. And if you think, oh, I don't need one right now, I can promise you're going to need a therapist to do life well. So get one. And if you don't have anything you want to work on right now, say, I want you to know me, because in an emergency, that's the worst time to get a therapist. Because you have to start from way back there to build that relationship, and the emergency has to wait for that. Now, if Joe were here, he would say, the healthiest way to do the journey is if you start it every day with a contemplative practice. And the contemplative practice that he believes everybody should do, along with other practices, but this one should be the basic one that you do every day. And I agree with him, although that's not my field, it's his, is a contemplative sit. If people don't know how to do that, Life in the Trinity Ministry on the Table, which is a resource we offer, and Joe teaches contemplative sit. And he does such a good job of it. So every day we either do a 15-minute sit, only because we have a clock that chimes every 15 minutes, or we ignore the clock at 15 minutes and do a 20-minute sit. Or we go outside and do a 20-minute sit. Either together. Sometimes Joe goes to the church and does his in the sanctuary at the church, and I do mine at home. And it's about emptying. So the way Joe describes it, which is very helpful to people, he says that he likes to think of it as 2 rocking chairs on the back porch. And every day he goes to sit in one, knowing that God's going to be sitting in the other. And he says, and then we sit there and I don't say anything and God doesn't say anything. It's just about presence. And then we go on with our day. And in his teaching of all of that, he does a good job without being too heady of talking about all the facets of that in terms of thinking and feeling and doing and expectation. And, you know, if you do a sit, then people say, oh man, I've been doing a sit every day and I didn't get anything. We're not doing it to get anything. Right? If I don't do a sit, I'm not as good a person as I am when I do. And it's just, I've got journals full of, man, I wish I'd have done a sit this morning. So that's a non-negotiable for us in terms of spiritual practice. If you consistently do a sit, then it's Kierkegaard again. If you look back at you before you started doing a sit and now, you'll see the difference in you. And if you do a sit every day, that means you're creating a space inside of you. So here's a good way to talk about that. Teresa of Avila, whose work I love and respect. By the way, the best translator of her work is Mirabai Starr, if anybody's interested in reading Teresa of Avila. And she talks about an interior castle that she has, that she helped form in her relationship with God inside herself. And she can go into her castle. Joe started with a spiritual director and spiritual practices at 14. He lived predominantly in silence for 3 of his 40 years. Like he's done all of that. He has a castle. I started doing serious spiritual work when I was 37. I have an efficiency apartment. But it's enough. Because when things around me make no sense, I can go there.
Mm.
But that apartment was built with a daily sit
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because you don't want to furnish it. It's space. It's not things.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And when you have that space to go to, then you are a better human.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a better chance of staying out of things that aren't your business or getting in things that are your business.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want things in time to go well, it's best to prepare for those things in the ways that you can before it's time.
Mm.
And daily sit, a spiritual director, and a therapist. You don't have to go to therapy every week. I don't anymore. I go when I need to.
Mm-hmm.
And we've gone to spiritual direction once a quarter now for maybe 5 years because we go together and our spiritual director doesn't live here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's enough, but it's not enough when you start. I think we have very high expectations for ourselves that we cannot meet. And then we not only feel like we're failing ourselves, we feel like we're failing everybody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we're not.
Mm-hmm.
We're just doing life.
Mm-hmm.
Doing life the best we know how.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that's helpful, I'm quoting Joe again, is he says with such conviction that nobody ever argues with him, you cannot do anything to get God to love you more. You can go on every mission trip. You can give all the money you have. You can do all of it. And God's not going to love you any more than God loves you right now.
Mm-hmm.
And you cannot do anything to get God to love you less.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And the systems that we have put in place, now this is me talking now, not Joe. The systems that we have put in place to try to retain membership by using fear, either intentionally or I hope unintentionally, to manipulate people. That has to stop.
Mm-hmm.
I spend a lot of, and I love the church. I love the church and I love my church. And I'm there. If I'm here in town, I'm there. But we got to, and we have to stop making people afraid to make changes.
Yes.
Because that means we're saying the last word of God is the next word of God. And that's not true.
Mm. Mm. Wow. Suzanne, I have one more question, and then I want people to be able to know where to go to find more about your work. So I like to ask every guest, what does flourishing mean to you nowadays?
Oh, a lot of things. I have had significant back trauma and major back surgery. I had 8-hour surgery 7 months ago, and it's a 12-month recovery time. The surgery was very successful, and I'm doing great. I have another kind of significant orthopedic problem that nobody wants to operate on.
Mm.
And it's on my sits bone.
Mm.
So that's tricky.
Mm.
If you can't sit for long periods of time, tricky. And so I'm working on that. Other than that, I'm flourishing in terms of health. I'm so grateful. Joe and I are both just healthy. We pretty much are. Flourishing for me now is supporting my grandchildren with no expectation that they be anybody but who they are.
Mm.
I just am so taken with all of them. I don't need them to win or get honors or anything. They all do, but I just like to look at them and be with them. They're very loving and generous with Joe and me. Our children have taught their children to be good grandchildren. I love my work, and I find it very life-giving. I'm writing a new book, and I'm a teacher who writes, not a writer who teaches. And it's harder, I think, to be a teacher who writes when you're talking about writing. So this book, I talked to my literary agent, who's wonderful. She was for the other 3 books, and told her what I wanted to do and what I was exploring. And she said, well, that's 12 books. So let's see what we can get that down to. So I've discovered over the years that we don't know how to grieve. We weren't taught how to. It's not modeled for us. And we love the idea of closure. And I've learned from Pauline Boss that closure is a myth. And the book to read is The Myth of Closure by Pauline Boss. And every other word that she's written. She's phenomenal. So I was going to write a book on grieving, the Enneagram and grieving. But it's now the Enneagram and loss. Because I don't know if there's ever been a time in the last at least 100 years where there's so much loss for so many people everywhere. It's just everywhere. And we don't know how to navigate it. In Enneagram wisdom, people say, I want to be another number. And I say, no, you don't. You want to be healthy in your number. And so when I teach, I talk about healthy, average, unhealthy, excess in your number, and pathology in your number. And when we are not able to flourish, which is different than not flourishing, when our world is set up so that we could flourish and we're not able to, we respond to that by being in excess in our number. So that means you would completely withdraw and live in your head. And that means I would try to be friends with every human I meet. And the more people who I can gather who love me, the more value I have, all the stuff. Those 2 things would not help either one of us flourish. So I would have to say that I'm flourishing when I'm doing something that I discerned well that I know is mine to do. And maybe that is what covers the whole thing. Knowing what's mine to do and doing that is a setup for me to flourish. And the thing that brings the greatest joy and comfort and I don't know, all the words. There are so many words. Is my love for and my relationship with Joe. He's an astonishing human being who, for some reason, loves me. And I told somebody yesterday when the children were little and Joe would come, we lived in parsonages for the first 15 years in ministry, and Joe would come home. We all ran to the door to meet him. And we kind of still all do.
Wow.
I think when a family has a person who's kind of centered and there, then everybody else does well when they're with them. And I try to be that person, but I'm 70-30. Joe's 95-5. So I would say all that about flourishing, and then I would say I'm never flourishing when I'm trying to flourish in somebody else's way of doing it. Like it's like, oh, I want to feel like they feel and do what they do and have what they have, and because they're flourishing. Well, that they might be, but you won't be. You got to do what's yours to do and have what's yours to have and do the next right thing.
I love that. That is beautiful and a very clear and articulate way to put that. Doing what is for us to do.
That's right.
I love that. Suzanne, thank you for your kindness. Thank you for your generosity. Where can people go to learn more about you and your work?
Okay, well, first of all, if we're gonna end on what is mine to do, on that big question, I'm gonna invite everybody to consider coming to boot camp. We do Enneagram boot camp in Dallas the first weekend, full weekend in August every year. And this year, I'm teaching what is mine to do. And for years, I've been teaching what is mine to do as a 2 with 3 questions that work for me. Boot camp is going to be with 3 questions that works for every number, and I've never taught it.
Wow.
So what is mine to do? You can sign up for boot camp on our website, which is lifeinthetrinityministry.com. You can get everything about me at SuzanneStabile.com. The books are The Road Back to You, The Path Between Us, The Journey Toward Wholeness. My podcast is The Enneagram Journey. Joel and I do that together. I say it like it's my podcast because he says it's my podcast, and it wouldn't happen without him, so I don't think it is, actually. And yeah, that should lead you to all the things we're up to. I am going to say one more thing, Evan, and I hope you'll leave it in. I never knew you as a pastor, and I've known you for an hour and a half, maybe. And all I know from my experience is right now, I'm absolutely sure that you're doing what is yours to do because of the way you do it and the presence and the spirit and the representation of Christ you bring.
Wow. Thank you, Suzanne. It's been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you.
Thank you.